I Hate the News is the weekly news bulletin from I Hate Politics podcast, a show about a human activity we love to hate. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. It's June 24th, 2025. A new report from the University of Maryland and the State Comptroller's Office offers the first real breakdown of the impact of federal cuts and layoffs in Maryland. The neighborhood next to the RFK Stadium, which is on the verge of redevelopment, wants a community benefits agreement. We find out what it is. Adjunct faculty at Stevenson University, a private school just outside Baltimore, unionize. Meanwhile, West Virginia University strips voting powers from faculty, students, and staff representatives on its Board of Governors per a new state law. Tips for hunting and fishing based on Maryland's Natural Resource Police blotter, and more. Stay with us.
I Hate Politics is brought to you by UMBC's Political Science Program, where you'll learn to shape public policy, impact communities, and function at the center of modern society. Learn more at shadygrove.umbc.edu.
I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we may hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society moving precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. Music for this episode comes from CatScan, an art pop rock band from Washington, D.C. Paul Chaperas on bass, Kevin Kingsley on guitars and saxophone, and Mason Shelby on synths and percussion. The songs we use in this episode are instrumental versions of songs they wrote for their latest album, Everything is Normal. You can find where they are playing on their Facebook and Instagram pages. A sad day for local news coverage in the DC metropolitan area. Washington Post ended the standalone Metro section, which will now be combined with the Style section. To be fair, New York Times killed the standalone Metro section in their paper more than 15 years ago. But the Baltimore Banner is coming to Montgomery County soon. Meanwhile, Bethesda Today and the Moco Show hold the local coverage north of the district. Frederick County still has the News Post doing an extraordinary job. The return of Donald Trump to presidency raised questions about the impact of his actions in the Washington, D.C. region, which he and his supporters have called the swamp. It is one thing to speculate on the impacts and another to try to estimate them based on available data. Last week, the Maryland Comptroller's Office issued a report it had commissioned to two professors at the Smith School of Business in the University of Maryland. And while not surprising, the details are still eye-opening. First, Maryland is home to 14 major military installations, such as the U.S. Cyber Command at Fort Meade, the biomedical labs at Fort Detrick, the Naval Academy in Annapolis, the Food and Drug Administration, the National Institutes of Health, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Social Security Administration, and some of the largest federal contractors in the nation: Lockheed Martin, Johns Hopkins University, Northrop Grumman, and Leidos. The federal government directed $150 billion a year to Maryland through wage, retirement income, contracts, grants, and direct payments such as Social Security, not including active duty military. 229,000 state residents were directly employed by the federal government and account for $27 billion in wages. That's 10% of all wage income in the state. 153,000 residents receive federal retirement income, almost $9 billion. Federal agencies award $46 billion in contracts for work done in Maryland, again, roughly 10% of the state's GDP. Another 30 billion comes in the form of grants and 38 billion more in direct payments such as Social Security, veterans benefits, and similar programs. Washington, D.C.'s regional economy is obviously closely tied to the federal government. The last time there were big federal layoffs were during the 2013-14 period of sequestration when Maryland lost 8,000 jobs. As of April this year, the state has lost 5,300 federal jobs. Washington, D.C. and Virginia both have more federal jobs than Maryland. D.C. is the seat of the federal government, and Virginia is a much larger state. 229,000 federal employees live in Maryland, but the state only has 160,000 federal jobs. The average salary for those Maryland federal jobs is $126,000 a year. The average salary for federal jobs in Virginia is $13,000 lower, but $10,000 higher in DC. The region's economy is integrated, so it is hard to disentangle the impact by jurisdiction. For the last 6 months, I have asked Maryland and Montgomery County officials about impact numbers, but only gotten generalities. This study finally puts in place the basis for understanding the scope of the problem. And even then, it is hard. The study's authors say that the numbers come from the quarterly census of employment and wages produced by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and FedScope, the database maintained by the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. Neither database lists active duty military personnel or classified intelligence jobs at, say, the National Security Agency. And they do not include the thousands of contract workers in the federal government. It seems that Mayor Bowser's plan for the development of the RFK Stadium is likely to move forward, together with $1 billion in support from the DC government, which has been accompanied by deep budget cuts in other areas, including education and environment. But the DC Council seems inclined to back the decision, even as it has pushed the final vote to early fall. Kingman Park is a neighborhood adjacent to the stadium, and there residents are organizing to get a community benefits agreement with the developers and the city. Nisha Patruni is one of the leaders of the effort.
We are in agreement with a lot of the feedback around limiting the parking, moving the location of the parking garages, but also want to make sure that we're highlighting, in addition to that, really thinking about this redevelopment site as an opportunity to expand public transportation access to this side of the river and then also east of the river, because historically the access through bus lines, even the streetcar, the metro has really been limited. So some of the things that we talk about are funding for an additional metro station to have more metro access on the other side of the development site, ensuring that the streetcar can still remain, even getting creative about how we think about the water taxi. Right now, there's a water taxi service that connects Alexandria to the wharf. Why can't we think about water taxi service that connects east of the river in Anacostia to the development site?
Maybe we should talk first about the parking spaces, really, because that is so central to the project. Now, I believe that the community wants no more than 2,000 parking spaces, but it seems that Washington commanders and the developers and the DC government say that they need at least 8,000 parking spaces. That's a big difference.
8,000 seems like such a high number. Can the council, can the mayor be more transparent about like the comparisons of if you look at other NFL stadiums?
One of the things you mentioned is a new metro station. Now, that is a Washington Metro WMATA issue.
Whenever we've tried to raise the question around the metro station at different listening sessions held by the council member or other town halls or forums, it's been shut down pretty quickly. And so it's been really hard actually to get traction on, hey, can we have a specific conversation around getting another metro station and what that would look like.
I see a demand for a footbridge to connect to the Anacostia Trail and the Kingan Park fields. Have you been talking to the developers?
The second most important area in our list of demands are the environmental and green space protections. So if you were to look at the term sheet right now, which it's public, everybody can go and read the term sheet. There are not a whole lot of specifics. The term sheet does talk about maintaining a certain percentage of green space, but it doesn't get into some of the details around what's going to happen to the current fields at RFK, what's going to happen to the current green space that neighbors enjoy. And that's really where we want to make sure that so much of that is preserved. They do talk about preserving green space, but it's inclusive of the existing field.
Speak a little bit about the affordable housing piece.
The development site is the stadium plus surrounding districts is what they're calling it. Districts and parcel land. The current term sheet only talks about the building of the stadium and then the building of parking facilities through 2030. And that's actually the only commitments that the term sheet really outlines in detail specific to the actual development. But the way that the mayor and then also our council member has been speaking about the entirety of the RFK site and those 100 plus 180 acres is how much investment and development it's going to bring towards 7 and Ward 8. And I will say that we as neighbors, we agree with that. We want the city to finally start investing money in developing Ward 7 and Ward 8 because there are parts of the city that desperately need more resources and more investment. And these have been some of how the mayor's office and our council member have framed the development, but there aren't specifics. So if some of those districts are going to include mixed use, high rise development or residential condos plus mixed use, then let's talk about how many units, which buildings are going to have affordable housing and what that looks like.
Who are parties to the community benefit agreement? Is the city also a party to it?
So I would say right now, since the council is the one negotiating, we would want those parties named to be like the developer, the commanders, and then the city council.
And the community itself is not a party to it, and you're just represented by the council then?
In other example, community benefits agreements, there are specific asks to set up oversight committees or implementation committees. And so right now in our draft of our proposed commitments, we have a section that talks about creating a community benefits oversight committee.
Well, I think the committee is easy. What I think is harder is having legal standing and being able to enforce an agreement like that.
Only recently did I start exploring this idea of, okay, how do we incorporate some type of legal counsel or retainer? I don't have answers yet to who would pay for that. How is it funded? I think those are things that we'll continue to look at examples. And our council member Felder, has an advisory board that is working on the draft of the community benefits plan. We want to ensure that what we've drafted is an input to that and considered since it has so much support from the community.
I also saw in your list of demands support for museums, libraries, public safety. Is it your expectation that the developers are going to pay something yearly for the maintenance of these public amenities?
It's both the developer and the commanders. And so because we view it as the commanders, they say they want to come home, they want to have their home in DC. And we really view that as, well, then how are you going to invest in the community that you're coming to?
Nisha Pachoni, thank you. North of Baltimore in Owings Mills, Maryland, adjunct faculty at Stevenson University have voted to unionize. Rick Boardman is an adjunct professor of film editing and a leader in the movement.
I actually was involved in getting our union here in that I represented adjuncts on what's called the faculty council. And I got frustrated. I've done it for 4 years, and I got frustrated in our inability to really be listened to. One of the triggering episodes was, since I was an elected representative, I wanted a list of who the adjuncts were so I could talk to them, and I was denied.
Denied by whom? The council or
The administration, the provost said, nope, you can't have that. It's privileged information. And they didn't say they were afraid of what I'd do with it, but that was kind of understood by me.
How many adjuncts does Stevenson have?
Well, our bargaining number was 296. It varies from semester to semester, but that's more than we thought there were. Since we didn't have the list, we had to kind of paste something together using the course catalog. And there's a list of adjuncts in there. We had to kind of guess, and we had a class schedule that wasn't always updated very much. So we tried to contact everybody we could that taught here. We would just stay out of what we thought would be their classroom at the times they were supposed to be and try to talk to them. We got more than 50%, which is all you need. But 70 of the 296, at least 70 some, never come here. They're online only, and some of them are in Ohio or Indiana, far away. And
are they also covered by the bargaining unit?
Yes.
When did you start the process?
Over 2 years ago. And I had a friend who used to work for SEIU, which I knew represented a lot of educational institutions. They were interested.
What were your substantive demands?
Pay is a big one. We want our pay to be commensurate with other schools around, with other colleges.
What is adjunct pay at Stevenson University now? What do you want it to be?
It's around $4,000 per course. I think more like 6,000 would be good. We'd be lucky to probably get 5,000. We got offered a 2% raise this last for the coming academic year.
Do you have a sense of what the impact on the university might be?
No, we know that they're expanding in many ways and that our president is paid very much money, which probably should be, I don't know. I know that our full-time professors are not paid commensurate. They had a report done, and they're not paid commensurate with other universities around, but they seem to be more assuaged by the claims of poverty by the administration, even though we have a massive building program going on right now. I'm not sure what we're going to end up with asking for or getting. I don't think we're going to break the university's back.
Rick Boardman, congratulations on getting the union vote. Good luck.
Well, thanks. And that's step one. Well, it's maybe step 2 or 3. We had got the election first, then we get the vote. We won the vote. Now we got to get a contract. So hopefully, they say that might take a year. So, but that first contract is our next big step, and we're looking forward to that.
Meanwhile, West Virginia University has stripped voting powers from faculty, staff, and student representatives on its Board of Governors. A new law passed by the Republican-led West Virginia legislature this spring expanded the governor's control over the board and diminished the role of board members thought to oppose the massive reorganization of the university the last few years, which included cutting 28 major fields, including in math and science. Current President E. Gordon G., who has overseen the massive reduction in the university's offerings, is set to retire this summer, and the board was divided over who should be the next president. West Virginia House Speaker Roger Hanshaw was believed to be interested in being the new president, but the board ended up picking another candidate. WMATA, the body that runs Washington Metro, also runs buses and is redesigning its bus routes. The shift to the new routes start next week, June 29th. Montgomery and Prince George's counties are also overhauling their bus routes to better match WMATA routes. The bus network redesign is really a reimagining of what transit buses are supposed to do. In the past, WMATA ran buses where Metro did not go. Sometimes these routes were long haul, from Montgomery and PG or Fairfax all the way into DC. The new network will be hub and spoke. where buses connect to metro stations rather than connect destinations directly. The new approach will allow the same bus fleet to offer more frequent service on shorter routes and make more reliable connections to trains. The old bus network was often slow and unreliable, but offered cheaper rides for those who did not want to pay for the more expensive train rides. Now the same commute will require train travel, and so the change makes transit more expensive. Metro says they are seeing an increase in ridership, and this change will further incentivize motorists to ditch their cars for the new bus train commute. Turns out I did not know that Maryland Department of Natural Resource Police issues a crime blotter on quarterly basis. As you go into the summer, here's what I learned about hunting and fishing from the spring edition. And if you know this already, happy hunting or fishing. Do not use bait to lure turkeys before you shoot them. On April 18th, which was opening day for turkey hunting season, a 72-year-old Boonesboro man was using corn kernels and sunflower seeds and caught doing that. $1,500 in fines if he's found guilty. Another case in Washington County, a 57-year-old Knoxville man using corn and Milo. A third one in Kent County, 53-year-old man from Wharton using Milo. A fourth case in Anne Arundel County, corn in this case. Don't put deer in headlights and then shoot them. On March 3rd in Somerset County, they found a 39-year-old from Charleston, West Virginia, with a recently killed deer and 2 handheld spotlights. $7,500 in fines if guilty. When fishing, carry a ruler and do not keep fish under 9 inches. Release them. Several cases of this, as you might imagine. On May 26th, 2 men fishing on St. Mary's River were caught with 11 undersized croakers, which carries a maximum first-time fine of $1,000, and if you do it again, it's $2,000 and or a year in prison. Also, no nets while fishing. On May 17th, 2 men were found near Piney Point Petroleum Station on the Potomac River in St. Mary's County with nets on board and undersized fish. That's $5,000 in fines. One of them has a pending charge and was arrested. Don't throw stones to disturb other people fishing. May 20th, a 55-year-old Stevensville man was cited for that. Max fine, $1,000 for the first offense. Harvesting shellfish requires special permits. 61-year-old Tillman Island man and a 31-year-old man from McDaniel did not pay the oyster surcharge and did not have a tidal fishing license. That's $50,000 in fine if guilty. On April 24th, dirt bike violation in Dance Mountain Wildlife Management Area in Allegheny County. 18-year-old from Barton hit a natural resources police officer with his bike and fled the scene. That's max 15 years and or more than $10,000 in fine. Several cases of folks not allowed to have guns, but out hunting with guns. That's all for this episode. Be sure to check out our feature interview series that come out Friday mornings. I Hate Politics is produced by me, Sunil Dasgupta, with support from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I direct UMBC's political science program at the universities at Shady Grove in Montgomery County, where, among other things, we explore and learn about politics, government, and society close to home. Music for this episode comes from CatScan, an art pop rock band from Washington, D.C. Paul Chaperas on bass, Kevin Kingsley on guitars and saxophone, and Mason Shelby on synthesizers and percussion. The songs we use in this episode are instrumental versions of songs they wrote for their latest album, Everything Is Normal. You can find out where they are playing on their Facebook and Instagram pages. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you'll subscribe and share the podcast as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.